Good evening, Broncos country. Let's give it a few seconds for the stream to just simmer. Again, this is an all-inclusive platform, so we want to make sure we have everybody included, guys. All right, and we are good. Welcome in to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I am co-host Ron White. And you might be thinking, that's not Dylan on the other side. That's another guy there. So I have a temp filling for me. Carl Dumler is joining me here. How are you doing today, Carl?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not quite as pretty as Dylan, but we'll still have some good football talk for you. Just close your eyes. Imagine I'm Dylan here. But no, I'm glad I get to join you, Ron. We got our chance to talk at the meet and greet for the first time,
Yes.
and so I'm glad I get to finally do a show with you and talk a little football.
Yes, most definitely. And we have some good news for all teams in the league, which we'll get here to shortly. But first, we want to welcome in some of our um, commenters here in the chat. Let's see who we have. We have David McElrath coming in with a $2 super chat. Thank you, my man, for always showing us support. He says, "Good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag Buckham times 3." Again, David, thank you for joining, and I'm hoping that you're having a great Saturday.
Yeah, David, good to see you in here, and always good to see Papa Bear getting a
Yeah.
chance to hang out with us here in the chat.
Oh, yes, definitely. And then we got Donald Wentz coming in. Thank you, sir. He says, "Good evening. Can't wait to get this show started." Well, it has kicked off, Donald, and thank you for coming in and joining us tonight. It's going to be great. Thank you for being in the chat. And then we also have Olio coming in. He says, "Can't wait to catch a pod live, even though it's going to be 2 a.m. when it starts." Ooh, Germany. Well, again, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you. I know it's early. We out in the morning there, but again, thank you for coming in. It's always, it's not a geographical station. It's a state of being, as Chad always says. So, regardless of where you guys are, it is so great to see everyone coming in from all countries. Again, Olio, thank you for joining us here today on the chat. We appreciate it.
Is it German Dankeschön? Is that thank you?
I think. Yeah, put it in the
Okay.
chat, Oli, if you wanna, if you're still in. But I think you're right. I think it's function.
Okay. Well, anyway, for my limited German, I just want to say thank you for joining us, staying up till
Yes.
2 a.m. to listen in and have a good time with us. And hopefully you're getting a chance to relax, and hopefully you've gotten enough sleep that you're not crashing tomorrow. But no, we got a good topic for the conversation. Like I said, some good news coming the Broncos' way, and I think it's maybe better news for the Broncos than for a lot of other teams.
Oh
And
yes.
I'll explain why I think that here in a little bit.
Yes. And String Guy coming in. Thank you, String Guy. He says, "Good evening, all. What is the salary cap raise impact for the Russ contract? Does Denver eat the entire dead cap this season now?" So glad you asked that question, String Guy. Let's get right into it. So yesterday, the NFL announced that the cap for the coming league year will be increasing from, I believe it was around 225 million to 255 million. So that's a whopping $30 million increase. And they stated that the unprecedented $30 million increase per year in the year's salary cap is a result of the full repayment of all amounts advanced by the clubs and deferred by the players during the pandemic. And also, it was an extraordinary increase in media revenue for the 2024 season. So obviously, we know that all teams in the league are impacted. Specifically for the Broncos, it was estimated that the Broncos would be about 24 million over the cap at the beginning of the new league year. But now that number is at around 10 million. So, String Guy, to answer your question or to kind of shed some light here as it pertains to the 85 million in the dead cap situation with the Russ Wilson, It makes the situation a bit better, a little bit more palatable, if you will. Denver makes the move to cut. If Denver makes that move to cut Russell Wilson, Broncos still have those three options on the table, so they can take that entire 85 million on the 2024 books. They can take 53 million in 2024 and 32 in 2025, and take 35 million in 2024 and 49 million in 2025. So, again, it does make it a little bit easier, a little bit better from a cap perspective overall, not just with the Russell situation, but I think just for the whole team, Carl. It definitely does make the situation for Denver a little bit better.
Yeah, I think so. There's a few reasons I think this is good for the Broncos. One, a bigger cap means those teams that have a lot more cash have a little bit more power.
Yeah.
Because some of these other teams that aren't as cash happy, all of a sudden these contracts that are getting a little bit bigger and a little bit more guarantees and things like that, some of those owners are going to struggle to pay some of this. Broncos don't have to worry about that. When you have the richest owner in the entire NFL, you have a lot of power when it comes to contract negotiations and how you can design contracts to bring players in. The second thing this does is it doesn't make the Broncos have to be as desperate, because the Broncos and every other team in the league has to be under the cap by March 13th, the start of the league year. So that's coming up here in what, 2.5 weeks?
2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yep. Yeah, something in that. And so if it had come in where most people were thinking in that 243 million kind of range instead of this 255, Broncos would have probably had to make some pretty desperate decisions. With Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, all those kind of guys that we've talked about on these shows quite a few times. They probably would have had to make at least one more cut than they have to now. And then on the other side of this, as String Guy says, I think the Broncos can get pretty aggressive in taking on the Russell Wilson contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably where I would go of say, let's take on another 13 million, or, go towards the higher end of things. Take the 55 million this year or the entire thing. Mm-hmm. I would not be taking the 35, because then you're just continuing this process of making next year that much harder cap wise. And I think you just bite the bullet now, get it out of the way, and then try to rebuild this roster as you go on. But yeah, again, this extra 13 million, just to kind of put it in perspective. Last year, the Broncos signed McGlinchey, Ben Powers. Those two, their cap hit for the year was about 13 million for this past year. So the Broncos can still go make some decent moves if they want to, or like I said, they can clean up their cap situation and be set up for another year moving forward. So yeah, that's why, again, I say this actually helps the Broncos more than a team that has 50, 60 million in cap space. Like, they wouldn't have to make any kind of desperate moves anytime soon. Yeah, they got more money to spend in free agency, but all that means now is all those other contracts have gone up that they were going to go after for some of these other free agents.
Yep.
So this is why certain teams get a little bit more help while others get hurt when you see more money come in than they thought.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That was one of my takeaways from this too, Carl, is, I know prior to this increase, it was floated that Broncos would be cutting a lot of folks, there'll be a lot of restructures. And not to say that still can't happen. I think you'll still see maybe, a restructure or two, maybe one player traded, maybe one player cut, right? But it's just not as pressing, because again, to your point, right? They had to do whatever it takes to kind of get to that cap number, and now they can get ahead of the curveball with being more cap compliant with this increase. So you mentioned it, players like Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, they were due for some sort of restructure, but again, not to say that still can't happen, but again, it makes it less likely given that increase in the cap.
Yeah, it definitely makes things a lot easier. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying? Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, it makes it where they don't have to be as desperate when teams call and say, "Hey, we want to trade for Cortland Sutton. Well, we're only going to give you a 6th round pick."
Yeah.
And if Broncos are right on that edge of where they're going to be at cap wise, or now they can sit there and say, no, we're holding on to him until you offer a third.
Right.
Like we can do that. That doesn't hurt us one bit.
Yes.
And, you know, same thing with Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, Jerry Jeudy, all these guys that have been talked about in some trade talks. It allows that Broncos, like I said, that extra time. It gives them almost like an extra month where they can hold on to him, clear up to the draft if need be, and then start figuring out a few things. Now, you'd have to get a little bit creative maybe in some of your free agency contracts, whoever you're going to bring in. But Broncos were never going to go crazy in free agency, whether they got this extra $13 million or not.
Yep. Yeah, and usually, and you know, they were active in free agency last year, and yeah, they're not going to be as active at all. I mean, maybe they'll get like a player or two, but it's not going to be as active and aggressive this year in free agency. And String Guy, thanks for coming back in with this question. Again, we just kind of alluded to this, but I do want to just bring you up here with the question on how does this change the re-signing of the other players? Well, PS2, it's the fifth-year option. I think the PS2 is coming up, so I know they'll pick that up without a problem. And then Simmons and Bowles. Right, it's as I just alluded to. Those were players that were due for a restructuring. Again, maybe one of them players they can still restructure, but again, it makes both of the restructures less likely. And then as far as Jeudy, I think Carl, they're either going to cut or trade Jeudy. I don't see Jeudy coming back to this team at all. It's I just think Judy's time in Denver is done.
Yeah, it's hard when you look at especially his draft class and all these receivers that are dominating the league. I mean, you got Brandon Ayuk that everybody's been talking about because he's been in the news for his girlfriend talking about them being done in San Francisco. And, he's been this perennial 1,000-yard receiver, just helped my fantasy team take second in my fantasy league. Thankfully I didn't finish last and have to get any kind of thing coming back at me. I don't know what everybody else's challenges are, but anyway, you think about him, Justin Jefferson,
CeeDee Lamb.
Seems like there's a couple other guys that have just really dominated from that draft class at the wide receiver position. And Jerry Jeudy, obviously, he's very, very talented, but he's never been able to live up to it, never been able to stay that fully healthy. And, I don't put it all on him. He's not had the best quarterback situation since being in the league compared to some of those other guys, but there's still plenty of things that can be on his shoulders as well. I think of maybe the most frustrating play of this entire past season involved Jerry Jeudy, wide open for a touchdown.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't even like he had to drag his feet a whole lot. It was just shorten his second step and he doesn't do it. And it's like, this is wide receiver 101 when you're near the sideline. You just drag that foot a little bit. It's an easy touchdown. And he couldn't do it. And that just, I don't know if it's selfishness, if it's just lack of concentration, again. So I agree with you. There's a good chance he could be gone. I do think he's a decent fit for what Sean Payton wants to do on offense. That working the middle of the field, those quick slant plays. He did that with Michael Thomas left and right. And Jerry Jeudy, that's like his specialty. So you would think, hey, this would be a perfect marriage between the two of them. And Jerry Jeudy just hasn't done well to put himself in a place to be successful. Garrett Bowles, he might be the biggest benefit of this cap increase. I thought he was for sure gone. Now, from people I've talked to, they've kind of said that they think that there's a decent chance the Broncos and him can get something figured out. So unless some team comes with a really good trade offer, I do think Garrett Bowles stands a decent chance of being here, which is great because I would not like to have that left tackle hole on this roster.
Yeah.
That would be kind of a frightening thing to think of who would be playing left tackle for the Broncos next season, unless they really think there's going to be a great left tackle that falls to them at 12, which is very possible. This is a really good tackle class. But again, in PS2, I'm pretty sure he's here. I don't think a team's ever going to come in with a big enough offer unless the Broncos get really desperate for a quarterback and trade up for one like JJ McCarthy or Daniels or May. And Simmons, he's kind of a little bit of a wild card here. He's getting up there in age. I love Simmons. Been one of my favorite players for a long time. But again, he's right on that edge of this is probably going to be some of his best value, and the Broncos need some draft picks to get younger on this roster.
Yeah. Again, if Simmons does leave, I'm going to be a little sad because he is one of my favorite players. But again, with this increased string rate, it's again, it doesn't make it as pressing, at least for the number 2 guy you have, the number 3 guy listed. Again, PS2 is going to stay. That's not a problem. Judy's more than likely gone, but I think Simmons and Bowles were the 2 that caused some concern because we just didn't know, given the previous cap situation, what was going to happen. But let's see who else we have in the chat coming in. We got DTR with a $5 super chat. Thank you for coming in. It says, looking forward to another great show and some good news for Broncos country. Yes, DTR, yesterday's news was some great news for Broncos country. So again, thank you for coming in on the chat. And then we got Keith Brugman coming in. Ron and Carl, I'll take it. Yes, you have a Ron and Carl showing tonight, Keith.
That's right.
Enjoy it.
I always like seeing Keith come in because my wife's maiden name is Brugman, so it's always kind of I doubt you guys are related, but always cool to see that for sure. And I see got a few others. John Field saying, hello, fellas. Greetings from Baltimore, Maryland. Can we trade Russ now that the cap went up? I still don't think any team's going to trade for him.
Yeah.
They don't want to take on any of that contract. They know the Broncos are going to cut him. I mean, it's almost at that point of just guaranteeing it at this point. His house is on the market. Seems like nobody wants to come to the negotiating table to figure out anything for the future. And so Broncos are going to have to cut him. They're going to have to eat that contract, and then teams are going to get into a little bit of not really a bidding war. I mean, I think he's just going to pick where he wants to go play. Mm-hmm. And I see Michael coming in as usual.
Wrong.
Good to see Michael coming in saying, good evening, Ron and Carl on the orange blue view. Go Broncos. Good to see you there, Michael.
You, Mike. Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you coming in. Let's see who else. Oh, we got Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, Phil. Says, good evening, Ron and Carl. So with the new cap, will it allow us to restructure less? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Go Broncos. Yes, Phil. So again, I'm not sure when you joined, we were just discussing, but yeah, to kind of to reiterate, yeah, I don't think don't expect as many restructures as before. Right. Again, I think the opportunity for restructuring will still present itself. You may still see Mike A. Simmons or a Bowles, right? Maybe doing a somewhat of a restructure. But again, with this salary cap situation down, it's making it seem as though that the Broncos will not have to restructure as many players. And again, with that, they can get to that deadline of being more cap compliant. I believe, as we mentioned, March 13th, we have to beat that deadline for the cap compliant agreement. So,
I mean, and there's 2 really easy moves the Broncos can make in just cutting Tim Patrick and cutting DJ Jones. There's $20 million right there for the cap, and then you've got $10 million already in the bank under, and then something I did hear the other day that made me think that's actually kind of a decent idea, because Sean Payton and the Saints did this a lot of obviously pushing money to future years. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think there has to be a better balance than what you're seeing with the Saints. You shouldn't be 80 million over the cap trying to figure things out every single year. But somebody pointed out that teams pushing cap hits to future years, a lot of what you're doing is paying $1 today that will be 75 cents on the dollar in 3 years because of how much the cap continues to go up. And I was like, that's not actually a bad way to kind of look at it. So I think, again, there's this balance between the two. And the teams that can do this are the ones that have those rich owners that can pay the guaranteed money to get the cap space or the cap bonus money hits spread over 5 years instead of over a couple. So again, there's got to be a balance. I wouldn't mind at least a couple restructures just so you can get a couple different players. And then you can go into the draft not having as many, I guess I would say, dangerous holes where you're just going like, we have to take somebody, meaning you have to reach for somebody. So I don't want to have to reach for a defensive lineman, say in the first round, where all of a sudden you're having to take Byron Murphy at 12, and he's a good player. I just don't think he's worth pick 12 good player.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those defensive linemen, they take a couple years to develop anyway. So I'd rather take a developmental type guy round 4 or 5 for that position instead of having to reach it at 12. That's why I really wouldn't mind if they go ahead and restructure a couple of these guys. Like you said, Sutton and Bowles and Simmons, if you're going to keep them around for a while, you might as well just go ahead and get those contracts figured out.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. It makes them look at the draft. Obviously, we know that quarterback's the biggest need. But you're right. It doesn't maybe have the Broncos go and look at tackle first round. Although tackle is, I think, somewhat of a low-key need. But if you bring back Garrett Bowles, right, then it's not that big of a need. So again, you look at other positions outside of the QB. We have edge, right? The edge position is definitely in need of some dire help. So again, it makes the Broncos kind of look at, some other positions as well in the draft. But we'll see what happens. Let's see. Thank you, Phil, for coming in for that question. That's a good question here. We got some quarterback talk here in the draft.
What? That never happens.
Yeah, quarterback in the draft, quarterback. Michael coming in, DeRonk coming in, JJ McCarthy, no matter what for me, or move back in the NFL draft. Yeah, I know McCarthy now has been kind of rising up some boards here, and it's kind of been the flavor of the week here. So, I guess what are your thoughts on McCarthy, Carl? How do you? I think in the grand scheme of things, and looking at all the other quarterbacks, how do you rank JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I would put him as that number 4 quarterback in this draft. And part, I don't think he played as the 4th best quarterback, but I think he has the potential just because he's one of the youngest. He's still 20 years old at this point. Going to be 21 when he starts his rookie season. You saw him play in a pro-style offense and handle it well. He did well throwing over the middle. He did great on third long situations, those obvious passing situations. It's easy to win on those first and second downs where teams aren't sure if you're going to be running, passing, whatever. Guys, when teams know you're absolutely going to be passing, can you go out there and make a play? He did great with that. He's got athleticism. He's got a big arm. I've heard the kid is tremendous in the locker room. I mean, he is a competitor. I guess he was telling some recruits that came in, like, if you're coming to Michigan to party, don't come here. If you're coming to play football, then come here. That's what this is about. Like, we're here to win. And to have a guy that has that mentality of, this is what it's all about. I would love to have that with the Broncos, especially at the most important position. Now, JJ McCarthy, no matter what, I might have a little bit of a problem with that. Like a little of a trade up to, like, say, pick 8 or 9, where you're giving up maybe next year's second round pick to get up there. I'm willing to take that kind of chance on a quarterback. But if we're talking multiple first round picks and some mid round picks, that's where I probably draw the line, because he's too much of a risk at this point, because there's just so much unknown. Because, like I said, he's young. Michigan did not throw the football a lot.
Yes.
If you go back and watch the Penn State game, I think they had 15 straight running plays at one point. And that concerns me a little bit. Of either, I'd be asking that question to their coaches, like, why did you do that? Is it because you don't trust McCarthy? Like, it's going to be a really close game and you don't want him to throw a really bad interception? Or is it just, hey, we see a weakness in them. They're saying, we dare you to run, which would be really stupid. I don't know why any team would tell Michigan, we dare you to run. But I just want to know a little bit more behind the coach's decisions of why they were doing that. Is it because of McCarthy, or did he have no bearing on the decision there?
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. Hart, he's such a difficult prospect to evaluate. He's
Yeah.
intriguing. Don't get me wrong, but he's so difficult because you mentioned it. It's like when you look at the film, there not a lot of there's not a lot of passing. So it's hard to really see how he, kind of how he sees the field. Now, I will say, now he is great with throwing the ball in the middle of the field. And Sean Payton, that's a staple in Sean Payton's offense. So I think from that perspective, yes. But with that NFL running heavy offense that they did in Michigan, it's just so hard to. I don't know. I guess you'll have to see how he checks out, combine and stuff. I don't know. It's just so, and I'm with you in the sense, Mike. Yeah, I, I will say this, and I've talked to Dylan about this, that they need to pick a quarter. I don't care who it is. Get a quarterback in the draft.
Yeah.
But I think for McCarthy, wrong. I don't know if I would want to move up, and I do push back a little bit on the no matter what portion.
Yeah.
Because if the Broncos do decide to move up, it's going to be for if they're getting into that top 3, top 4 range, then it's going to be for one of those top 3 quarterbacks. And that's where I kind of seen the if they want to move up no matter what for a Drake May, sure. Move up no matter what for a Jaden Daniels, sure. But even well, we know about Caleb Williams, but
Right.
I think that's kind of where I'm at, Mike. Now, if they do stay pat at 12, or maybe even if McCarthy does fall and you want to move back and get him, take a fly on him, sure, why not? But I just think at this point, despite what media outlets have on McCarthy, he's just difficult to evaluate for me right now. So I don't want to push the trigger at 12.
Yeah. And I push back on this idea that he has really moved up like everybody's talking about. I think we see this ebb and flow in draft analysis. One person says, oh, NFL teams are really high on him. All of a sudden, the next mock drafts that come out the next week have him, going top 8 in every single mock draft. And then after the combine, somebody might come out and say, oh, he did not interview well with teams. And all of a sudden, now he's back down to like pick 20 or something like that.
Right.
And falling behind Bo Nix and Penix and those kind of things. So there's still a long process to determine where these guys are going to go. Like I said, if you can get him at 12, I really have no problem with that, because I'm willing to take that kind of chance on a talent like him. He's got the arm, he's got the mind, he's got the legs. You can do a lot of things with him. And I'm with you. I think you got to take a chance this year or next year. And I would rather take the chance this year on the quarterback, just because next year's class, I'm not liking it as much. And I know everybody says, oh, everybody says that every year. And then there's a few guys that emerge. No, we knew about Drake May and Caleb Williams. We knew those guys were going to be top 5 picks. That was already decided. And there's a couple other guys that were already emerging. Bo Nix had a great season last year. Penix had a great season the year, so it's not like these guys are coming out of nowhere. We've had a little idea of how they were going to be in this draft. So, I'm with you. I'm not going to do a huge move up, but I'm willing to do a little one if it means securing my quarterback.
Exactly. Yep. Got it. All right. Let's see. We got Lawrence Rivera coming in the chat. Thank you, sir, for coming in tonight. We appreciate it. He says, we got to get as many picks as we can in those top 3 rounds. Those are the players that succeed. Anything else is depth. Well, yeah, Lawrence, this is going to involve some trading back. If we're looking to get as many picks as possible, they're only, how many picks the Broncos have? Is it 6 total? I gotta look at it. But yeah, I think there's only no second round pick with Sean Payton. I don't look to pick again to the 3rd round. So yeah, I mean, it's going to involve some trading back. And again, I won't be, Lawrence, to your point, I won't be opposed to a trade back in the 1st round. Again, depending on, how the board falls, who's there, who's high on the Broncos draft board, right? A lot of those factor in. But I definitely wouldn't be opposed to the Broncos trading back to add some more later round picks to see how they can improve the roster. But yeah, your point's well taken there, guy.
Yeah, I know a lot of people I've talked to in the NFL draft circles have said this is not a great draft after the first about 3 to 4 rounds. You saw probably a record number of underclassmen go back to college, and that's an NIL situation. People ask, like, what is this NIL going to do to the NFL? Well, it's going to make players a little more hesitant to come out. They don't have to worry about risking injury because I'm already a millionaire. I'm good. I'm set. So
yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
I can go back and enjoy college for another year. So this isn't a very deep draft. If you can get as many picks in those top 4 rounds as possible, it would be a great help for the Broncos.
Most definitely. But thank you, Lawrence, for coming in with that. We appreciate it. Got Chase Wellner coming in. Hey, Ron and Carl. Hello to you too, sir. Hopefully you are doing well, and thank you for coming in to the chat. We appreciate it. All right, let's see who else we got coming in. And again, guys, no Mr. Producer tonight, so just bear with us as we peruse the chat. Oh, we got Michael Davis coming in with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you, my man, for always showing up. He says, gents, I see the 12% increase in cap for NFL teams reset all markets. Players will be 12% more expensive. NFL gents are like realtors. Hashtag still broke.
Yeah, and this is where I'm thankful, honestly, that the Broncos are not going to be big spenders because, like you said, really that 12% always goes to the top tier or the top of the free agency class guys that reset the market for their positions. It's not for that middle tier, lower tier kind of guys. I know when they put in the rookie wage scale, a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to be great for those veterans. No, it just meant the really top tier guys just got a lot richer. And so to me, this is a great year for the Broncos to be where they are, of going after those, like I said, second tier, third tier guys, the lunch pail, come to work. They're not going to get a whole lot of praise for being a great player, but they're going to be good enough for you. Go find those NFL average kind of guys to especially add to a few of these positions and then try to hope that you can hit on a few of these draft picks and that your coaching staff being here for a second year makes a huge difference. Those are the kind of things that you're hoping take the Broncos to that next level.
Yep. I agree. All righty. Thank you, Michael, again for coming in with that. We appreciate it. Let's see who else we have in the chat. Give us a second, guys. Yep, DTR coming back in. Draft a QB until you find your guy. Yes. I think we're all in agreement there, DTR, of keep throwing as many darts at the board as you can. You have to go and attempt to get your guy and try and hopefully that guy pans out. The Broncos have failed. I mean, I know with the Paxton Lynch situation, that was their attempt to find a guy. Obviously, it was an epic fail. But, now is the time to go and draft it. Emphasis on draft. Because the Broncos have gone far too many times of picking a player or QB from another team. It doesn't work. It's time for them to draft and develop their guy.
Yeah, I said this on, I think, the show on Tuesday. The Paxton Lynch situation, there was so much incompetence that went into that decision that it's not even funny. I mean, from the Broncos not even talking to him once before they drafted him. Like, you don't sit down with your future franchise quarterback, even like sitting down with him at the combine, just having a conversation and saying, hey, let's talk through some things. Let's get you on the whiteboard for 5 minutes, see how you can understand how a play design is going. To Gary Kubiak coming to John Elway and saying, I don't want this kid. He cannot play in the NFL.
Right.
And John Elway going, I don't care what you say.
Right.
Like, if George Payton did that to Sean Payton, I'm pretty sure they would come to. I'm pretty sure there would be a boxing match in the war room.
Oh yeah.
If that happened. Sean Payton is picking his guy. Gary Kubiak didn't have the power that Sean Payton has in the building at this time. So, yeah, I'm with you. You got to take those chances on the quarterback position. I think you see too many teams, they wait forever, thinking we got to just get the right guy. And then all of a sudden that guy doesn't work out. And you spent 3 years building up everything to get that guy. And then it doesn't work out. And so take those chances, even if it's not a first round guy. If it's second or third round and you're taking a chance, it's at least worth a dart throw to see what you can do.
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of dart throws out there in the third round, like thinking Michael Pratt, maybe a Spencer Rattler.
Right.
So even if they don't go QB round 1, I'm looking at those two as day 2 picks, maybe round 3 that the Broncos can target. I mean, I would say for me, if one of the top, let's say 5 quarterbacks are gone, maybe looking at a Spencer Rattler, in round 3. I actually like him. Now, of course, the character obviously is a big concern. But the dude has some talent, Carl. Like I've been looking at some film, and he has an arm on him. He can definitely sling it. So I think with some development with Sean Payton, I think he can be something. And I wouldn't mind that at all in round 3 potentially.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like I said, it's worth a chance. Yeah. Maybe the guy turns into something. Maybe he's matured and figured some things out. I listened to some of his interviews at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, hey, this kid actually sounds like a whole different kid than he was in high school. Because I know everybody watched the Quarterback One show, and I mean, I get it. And he was a real big-time jerk in high school. I mean, he thought he was everything and that the world should bow down at his feet. But obviously he's gone through some humbling things in the college game, from getting benched to having to transfer because he wasn't going to get a starting job, to getting beat up behind that offensive line there in South Carolina. There's a lot of things that have humbled that kid, and maybe that's exactly what he needed to become the star that he can be.
Yeah, most definitely. All righty, let's see who else. We got the big Mike coming in. Mike Edo coming in with the $10 super chat. Thank you for coming in, my man. We always appreciate you in here. Hey, Ron and Carl. Hey, Dylan, wherever you are. Here's my question, gentlemen. If McCarthy is so good, why wouldn't Crazy Jim trade Herbert and draft McCarthy? Really a huge question for me. Go Orange and Blue View. I'll let you take this one first, Carl.
Yeah, so there's one really, really big reason that they cannot even think about doing this, and that would be the $108.5 million dead cap hit if they traded Justin Herbert right now. Yeah. We're talking about how much trouble the Broncos are in with the Russell Wilson contract. The Chargers, they can't even begin to think about doing something like that. Their cap situation is in worse shape than the Broncos. They're already going to have to make some really tough decisions. Even with this extra 12, 13 million, they've got a few more decisions to make than the Broncos do. And if they had to take on $108 million extra hit, they just can't make this move. As much as he would love to have McCarthy, and I do, I think he really loves that kid. I think part of his reason for going to the NFL was McCarthy not returning to Michigan. He didn't want to have to restart with a whole new quarterback. So this was that perfect time to make that jump and to go get a quarterback like Justin Herbert as your guy. You have to remember, Justin Herbert's a top 10 quarterback in football. And so to go from that to an unknown in McCarthy, yes, he knows a lot about McCarthy. I think there would still be some concerns there. So I think if he was on a team that didn't have a quarterback, that would be his move. I really do. Yeah. I don't think that his talk of viewing McCarthy as the best quarterback in this draft is him just trying to hype up his guy. I really do think he thinks that. Just because that's Jim Harbaugh. He always thinks his guys are the best. I appreciate that about him as a coach. He really likes his players, but no, that it's just not in the cards for them to make that trade.
Yeah, and what else is he going to say, Carl? Like, of course he's going to think his guy is the best quarterback out of the class. But yeah, with the cap situation with the Chargers, it just wouldn't financially make sense, Mike. And also you'd have to think, now granted, there still has to be some getting him accustomed to pro level competition. Granted, they did run, an NFL, similar style NFL offense in Michigan, but again, the pros are a different level. So having to kind of develop him for that also, when you already have a quarterback in Herbert that can run it. That you're right, Carl. Like Herbert is top 10. Some would even say like maybe even top 7, top 8 quarterback in the league. So when you have that quarterback on your roster with a pretty solid roster overall for the Chargers, I don't see why Jim Harbaugh would even make the move to draft McCarthy. But yeah, he's going to talk up his guy, to get his value up for sure.
Yeah, but that's. I mean, I get that question. If he's not willing to endorse his own guy by taking him, should we take him? Kind of thing. But like I said, it's just not in the cards for them. So I don't think that's a knock on McCarthy for him not to be there.
But let me ask you this question, Carlos. I think this came up, I believe, in another show that we did either a week or two ago. Because he knows McCarthy so well, when the Broncos do play the Chargers, does that make you a little nervous? Like, when those matchups come. Now, I know it'll be obviously different style offense, things like that. But I think just the player itself, like he knows, Jim Harbaugh knows how McCarthy operates, kind of commands the offense. Is that a little bit concerning to you?
A little bit, I guess. The other part of this, though, is, I mean, obviously JJ McCarthy knows him, and the Chargers just hired the defensive coordinator from Michigan to follow him to the Chargers. Mm-hmm. And so JJ McCarthy's been playing against that defensive style for the last few years here. So I think that could also be an advantage towards JJ McCarthy of what they're going to try to use against him. I think it kind of neutralizes itself a little bit there. And because both those guys are so competitive, I think it'd be a fun little battle where Jim Harbaugh wants to beat his old quarterback and JJ McCarthy wants to beat his old coach to prove that he was the guy that really helped him get that final national championship that he's been wanting for all these years. So I think it would be a fun little battle between those two to see that going on. I think it'd be a love-hate relationship between them.
Okay. Yeah, that did cause me some concern when that question was brought up. And I said, I was a bit concerned. It would, but yeah, you're right. I guess I didn't put in, the whole that the defensive coordinator followed him. And I think they know what each other does well. And of course that can factor into this. And again, I know it'll be a different style, whole levels, different style of offense. So, but it'll be interesting to see that, I guess, that cat mouse game, if you will, when the two match up. So, all righty, let's see who we got here coming in the chat. Oh, Mike again with a $5 super chat. Thank you again for coming in, my man. We appreciate it. He says, I think another team would take on Herbert's whole contract being a top 10 QB. Wouldn't that give them cap relief?
So, no. The issue is the guaranteed money. This is where the dead money comes into play. A team can take on some of the bonuses, but they can't take on the ones that the Chargers have already paid out. And the way that his contract was set up was they were going to pay fully guaranteed 2024, 2025, and the signing bonus. So all three of those, the Chargers have already put into the bank account of Justin Herbert. And so a team can't take those on. There's some other parts of the contract that they could. So there could be a little bit of relief if they're willing to take on some of it. But I think it'd be still pretty tough for the Chargers to figure out how to get that to it, even just to an even place where it's no dead money, but no cap savings. Like I said, we're talking about 108 million or whatever I said earlier, 105. I can't remember. Let's see. Let me bring it back up. 108.5 million. So they would have to figure out a way that a team is going to take all of that on in some way, some form. It just would be really, really tough to make that work. And like I said, I think part of what attracted Jim Harbaugh to going to the Chargers is Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
That was some of the talk when Sean Payton was thinking about going to the Chargers last year. That why wouldn't he want to go work with a quarterback like this? Now, thankfully, the Chargers owner was very cheap and didn't want to pay the trade a first round pick and $20 to $25 million per year contract to a coach. So it worked out for the Broncos where they got themselves a good coach. But again, Herbert is a huge selling piece of why anybody would want to go to the Chargers right now.
Yeah. And I'm seeing comments in here, about Herbert not, when I see people don't think Herbert is that elite. But again, I mean, that was, you'd have to guess that's why Jim Harbaugh went to the Chargers, just because of Herbert. And the numbers for Herbert ever since he's been in the league have been great numbers that would lead you to believe that he is a top 10 quarterback in this league. So, I know people are talking about the playoffs here. Chargers are some people are mentioning that Chargers are getting Barkley and going to the playoffs. I see that as a comment. But yeah, I think Herbert was definitely, to your point, Carl, Herbert was the reason. And not just Herbert, it's that the roster. I mean, because think about it, the Chargers roster overall is pretty good. It's a very solid roster. Yeah. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Asante Samuel. It's a pretty, it's a pretty good roster. I just think for the Chargers, it didn't have the coaching in place to kind of get them there. But now with, a proven coach as Harbaugh is, it could happen. But enough about the Chargers. Let's Broncos podcast here. Let's see who else we have in the chat. Let's see here. I'm just kind of perusing through. We got a Knicks fan in here, David Youngkin coming in. Knicks might be our QB.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead. What? I guess I'm not a. I guess with Knicks, I see. So I guess here's my thing with Knicks. Can he run Sean Payton's offense? I'm pretty sure he can. I mean, when he was at Oregon, he ran that style of offense well. I think I'm more so looking for kind of like the flashy, the more talented, the more skilled, and he doesn't do that for me. He's not going to wow you. And I'm looking for more wow factor. Like I've watched the top 3 QBs in this class, and that's what has me wanting the Broncos to try to get up as far as they can to take one of those 3. Particularly Drake May. I think Drake May, for me, Carl, he checks all of the boxes from what I've seen, every single last box. There are a few cons out there for him. Obviously, no quarterback prospect is perfect. The offense, throwing on the run, throwing in the middle of the field. The deep ball is it's good enough, I think, for him. I think he's kind of the one that would be best for the Broncos. But you're right, David. Knicks might end up being the guy. I guess for me personally, I just don't think he's that great of a prospect, at least in my own mind, for Denver. But
yeah,
a good quarterback.
So I'm probably a little higher on Knicks than most people. Because I do think he is a great fit with Sean Payton. He is, from everything I've heard from people, he is a smart guy. I'm I listened to some of his teammates talk about him. They said that he is running the offensive meetings and like coaching up the players. A lot of people have talked about how he's set to have a great after playing career as a coach, because he does that well. If he can explain an offense to other positions and tell them how to do their job. I agree with you. I think there's some limitations. He doesn't have the greatest arm. That obviously the Oregon offense is a very, very quarterback friendly offense. A lot of first read decisions, a lot of things behind the line of scrimmage. So really, if you put NFL type throws side by side, I don't think that Bo Nix has that many more than a JJ McCarthy. Because JJ McCarthy, he didn't throw as much, but a lot of his were actual NFL type reads and throws and those kind of things. But again, like I said, I think Bo Nix could run the offense well. I think he could be a top half of the league quarterback. And like, to me, if you're going to miss out on the top three guys, I think there's a decent chance that Bo Nix falls out of the first round, because like I said, there's some limitations there. Age plays a factor, all of that. So maybe you take an offensive tackle in the first, and then you figure out a way to get back into the second round and take yourself Bo Nix. And on a rookie contract, Bo Nix could make your team very, very competitive. You know, you can surround him with a lot of talent to maximize what he can do on the field. I don't think he is that type that all of a sudden you're like, this is our franchise guy for the next 15, 20 years. He's not that kind of guy. But like I said, if you're going to miss out on those type of prospects because you're at pick 12, you could do a lot worse than getting a Bo Nix that allows you to have a lot of cap flexibility, having that guy on a rookie contract for the next about 4 or 5 years. You know, or you could trade back in the first round. You know, like instead of being at 12, you trade back to 25 and take a Bo Nix. I'm fine with that too, because you got more draft picks to then surround him again with some more talent. So the Broncos could do worse than getting Bo Nix into this building. I think he's going to be well liked by teammates from everybody I've heard. He does well in the locker room. But again, I'd probably say Penix is more talented. Obviously, JJ McCarthy is more talented, better arms, a lot better, great wow throws moments from those two compared to Bo Nix. But he is kind of a, hey, I'm just going to go get completions for you. I'm going to keep the offense doing what it's supposed to be doing. You know, and sometimes a guy like Sean Payton, I would say Kyle Shanahan is the same way. He likes a quarterback that just does what he tells him to do, and maybe has a little bit of improv ability beyond that. But for the most part, once a quarterback, hey, I'm going to design an offense that's going to get guys open for you. I just need you to throw it to the guy I tell you to throw it to.
Yep.
And Bo Nix can do that for you.
Yeah. And again, he could, like David Youngkin's coming in with the $4.99 super chat. All I'm saying is Denver doesn't move up, then you might be stuck with them. Yeah. And again, you know, I think, you know, I guess I'm enamored by just dynamicism when it comes to the QB position, Carl. You know, and you know, those top three, they do it for me. But again, that's not to say that Bo Nix can't go out and get the job done. You know, again, he's not flashy, but you know, I think, and you're right, Carl. I've heard that as far as his locker room presence, he's in the meetings. I think he'll be a great like NFL coach. He seems to have like a great football mind, that can kind of check his protections, throw the ball to the open receiver, and just kind of move the chains. So I think if you're asking, you know, a quarterback to come in and do that, Bo Nix is your guy. And in a Sean Payton offense, that will work. Yeah. But I think, again, I said it, that they just need to get some quarterback. If Bo Nix is the guy, so be it. I think I'll be okay with that. Again, he's not in my top 3 or 4, but you know, if the Broncos do come away with Bo Nix, David, it's fine. It'll be, you know, what they need, and they can develop Bo Nix for sure. So,
right. Well, and I always say, where a quarterback goes matters almost as much as the talent that they bring. You know, I've seen some really, really talented quarterbacks go to crappy situations and just get obliterated. I think of probably the quarterback, I think if he had gone to even an average situation, I think he could have had a really great NFL career, but he fell apart, was David Carr. Not Derek Carr,
yes.
David Carr, his older brother. That guy, one of the best players at the quarterback position I have watched coming out of college. He just dominated, but then went to that horrible Houston situation where they had no offensive line. He got beat up for his first 3 years in the league. And by that point, to quote Sam Darnold, he was seeing ghosts. And he was just done, unfortunately. And so I think any quarterback of these top about 5-6 guys, if they get Sean Payton as their coach, they better be thanking whoever they want to thank that they went to a great situation, because Sean Payton, he is a top 5 offensive mind. Doesn't mean he's a top 5 head coach. But when we're talking about offensive mind in football, you know, you're talking about the Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, and then it might be Sean Payton as that next great offensive mind when it comes to the league. And just being able to figure out how to get players open. You know, if you go back and watch this last year, this is why Russell Wilson just does not work. It is water and oil when it comes to Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Their styles do not mix. There were so many times the wide receivers were wide open, and I'm pretty darn sure they were first read makes. And Russell Wilson, you'd see like he'd get ready to pull the trigger, and I don't know, I don't quite know, it's too quick. And then all of a sudden he runs out of the pocket and either takes a sack or does something magical. Now, I'm not going to try to take that away from Russell Wilson. He had some magical moments this last year. But to have a quarterback, again, that can find that first read and go make that throw.
The open receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Jerry Jeudy could have had 1,000 yards this year because he was open a lot. And so it's, like I said, if you get that kind of quarterback in here, I think he can produce really well and keep this offense going, makes life a little bit easier on the defense where they're not so many 3 and outs. You know, that was kind of the thing this year with the Broncos. They were either 3 and out or magic happened. There wasn't much in between those two things. And it's just, it's tough to watch. You know, it's great because we had some great moments, like I said, of just plays that I will remember for quite a while. And I see Todd saying, is Carl hating on my boy Bo Nix? I just complimented him a lot. I like I said, I'm really high on him. I think he is a great fit with Sean Payton. And so I think
I was doing more than hating.
I think if that's the way the Broncos come out of this, is Bo Nix is the quarterback that they draft, I'm going to be okay with that. I'm not going to be like jumping up for joy going, that's our guy. Like we're set for the next 15 years at quarterback. But I'm going to feel like, hey, for the next 4 or 5 years, I think the Broncos got their guy, and they can really do well to build a strong roster around him to go be very successful in this league, score a lot of points. And then we'll have to see if he's figured out a few more things later on. Like I said, there's a ceiling though on Bo Nix, where some of these other guys have a little bit higher ceiling. That's my one concern with him is there's just, like I said, the lack of the arm talent compared to some of these other players. It just doesn't snap quite as quick. And in the NFL, that can make a huge difference. College, you can get away with it a little bit more. But it's just that little difference can make a difference between a big play and a big play for the defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then Todd also says here, Nick's accuracy is off the charts. And then
it's a little hyped up by those easy throws.
Yeah, easy throws. Yeah.
I'm not going to say
off the
he
charts.
is accurate.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's most accurate quarterback in college history accurate. Now, yes, the stats would say, yes, he is. He just set the record for that this last year. But like I said, when you have so many of your passes in that 0 to 5 or even behind the line of scrimmage, it makes things a little bit easier compared to some of these other guys that are challenging down the field a little bit more. Now, he does actually well throwing when he does throw deep. He does pretty well with it. He just doesn't do it as often as a lot of these other guys. He's one of those, he's got to see it that they are open before he's willing to pull the trigger on that. He's willing to take those checkdowns a lot more than some of the other guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned it when you were talking about Russell Wilson and some of his play this year. I witnessed it firsthand, Carl, when I was at a few of those Broncos games. Like I would be sitting in the end zone with Jerry Jeudy wide open down the sideline, stare me in my face, and Russell Wilson would not even like you say, he had that moment of hesitation, and then he'd take off running. And I'm like, dude, he's open. Throw the ball. Like, what are you doing? So it was a lot of frustrating moments. And I obviously Judy had frustration on his face once the play was over, So again, You're right. I think Bo Nix, and I think Todd, I think I was the one, again, to clear it up, I was the one that was hating a little bit. Again, if Bo Nix is the selection, that's all I can ask for in the sense of they're going to get a quarterback. He's just not in my top 4. But again, if he makes it to the Broncos, I'm more encouraged. And obviously with the tutelage under Sean Payton, he can be something. And you're right, in that Oregon offense, Bo Nix would find the open receiver. And that's what Denver needs. Denver needs a quarterback that can find the open guy. So bringing him in there, I think any of these quarterbacks will do that. McCarthy even. I mean, so it just kind of depends on what their flavor is. But once they get that guy, I think you're right. We'll start to see this offense take shape.
Yeah, I could see Bo Nix actually winning Rookie of the Year because he would be paired with Sean Payton, compared to Caleb Williams going to the Bears right now, who just fired another offensive coordinator, and not sure who they really brought in is actually that big of an upgrade at this point. Then you think about some of these other teams like the Patriots. Man, I would hate to be a quarterback and go into that situation where they have no weapons. And they just hired a defensive-minded coach. I really think if you're going to have a young quarterback, you need an offensive-minded coach that can really speak well to that player. You think of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, those two getting paired together was a dream scenario for both of them. Unfortunately, for the Broncos, it has hurt them pretty bad. But yes, that's why I think like any of these guys getting paired with Sean Payton is going to be a really good situation. Doesn't mean they're going to end up being the best quarterback of the group. It just means they could have a lot more early success because they've got a coach that knows how to speak to them, knows how to design an offense that can actually give them easy throws, and can just actually take advantage of their entire full skill set.
Yes, definitely. Alrighty, guys. I think we are a little over an hour, but before we go, I want to shout out the Ronk again. Great show tonight, Ron and Carl on Orange and Blue View. Go Broncos. Again, Mikey, thank you for coming in as always with your support. We appreciate you, my man. We appreciate you. So again, that's going to wrap up another installment of the Orange and Blue View. Again, make sure if you don't do anything, guys, you like, subscribe, and share to all the platforms. And it was great to have all of you guys in the chat tonight. Thank you, Carl, for coming on in place of Dylan to talk Broncos. This was a great conversation with you. Thank you for joining me. Any parting words for Broncos country, Carl, before we head on out?
No, I just thank you for letting me come on. I didn't even realize we're already at an hour. I was thinking like we're like 20 minutes in, and man, time flies when you're having fun. But no, appreciate all your guys' conversation here tonight. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm still excited for what the Broncos have going forward. I know a lot of people are a little bit nervous about this upcoming season. I maybe have a little too much confidence in this coaching staff to get things figured out and be able to still make this team find a way to be successful, even in a tough division. Obviously Chiefs have been dominating. Chargers probably just got better hiring a good coach. Raiders, always tough for the Broncos for some reason, which really stinks ever since Shanahan was let go. But still, like I said, I think there's some good things ahead. It's going to be fun to see where they go with the quarterback position. both in free agency. I think they're two quarterbacks. I think they're going to be getting two quarterbacks, new ones this year, one in free agency, one in the draft. And whether that's pick 12, pick 8, pick 76, whatever it may be, I'm interested to see how Sean Payton can turn that guy into a decent player in the NFL.
Yes, ditto. I echo everything you said. Yep. Alrighty, guys. Well, again, thank you for tuning in. And you guys have a great evening, and we will see you next Saturday. Go Broncos.